Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Developing Oral Language Skills with Clicker. I'm Tanya Johnston, a curriculum specialist here at Crick Software, and today we're joined by Lidia Giosa, a speech and language pathologist who works in a school district in Ontario, Canada. We'll spend the next hour talking with Lidia about the importance of developing oral language skills, and how we can use Clicker to help. Please feel free to add any questions to the Q&A section, and my colleague Tony will be answering the questions throughout the webinar. The webinar is also being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available to you if you need it. Lidia, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Tanya. It's wonderful to be here today with you.
Why don't we begin, Lidia, by sharing the goals of the session with the group?
Sure. So today we're going to be looking at why it's important to consider oral language skills, how oral language skills are fundamental to reading and writing skills. We're going to look at some specific strategies that educators can use to support students' oral language and literacy development. And we're going to look at some different ways that Clicker can help support oral language learning.
Fantastic, Lidia. Can we start by exploring what oral language skills are and why it's so important for us to be thinking about them?
Yes, sure. So oral language is really an umbrella term. It captures different areas of language development. So we have vocabulary, word structure, sentence structure, text structure, and higher level comprehension skills. So as a whole, these skills are so essential for academic and social success at school, and they're very connected to well-being as well. They're pretty much needed for everything that happens in a day, from beginning to end. So we can see here, having a conversation, talking about your feelings, following instructions, answering questions about stories, problem solving. It really is all encompassing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's really clear that oral language skills are so important in school, and obviously outside of school too. And what about the connection to literacy skills? Could you speak to this?
Yes, for sure. So I'm going to draw on a framework from the 80s that really shows the connection between oral language and literacy and how interconnected they are. So in this framework, we see reading comprehension on the right side here. And by reading, we mean making meaning from written text. And we can see that we absolutely need decoding and language comprehension. And then the same is true for writing and written expression. So making meaning via written text. And we can see that the flip side is needed. So both encoding and language expression. So what we want to understand is that the comprehension and expression parts of the literacy equations also are the oral language skills that we've mentioned. So language is language. And this is where the direct link between oral language and literacy is. So when we think about building vocabulary knowledge, for example, we can see how that is going to support students' oral comprehension and their reading comprehension. And likewise, when there's difficulties, so for example, if a student has difficulty using complex language structures, we're going to see that in their oral expression and in their written expression as well. So what it boils down to is really how we can't have literacy without the language part.
Oh, absolutely. What do you see, Lidia, as kind of the ways that educators can support their students with oral language skills?
Right. So oral language learning can be supported in the classroom in so many ways, offline and online, with technology and programs such as Clicker. The most powerful and fundamental way of developing language skills is through authentic and meaningful interactions, right? So we want to think about play, conversations, daily activities, routines for the younger learners, and learning activities for all learners. And we know, Tanya, that the back and forth exchange that happens in these contexts is where language learning really lives and grows, right? So especially when communication strategies are being used. So we're just going to go over a few examples today. And again, these strategies are helpful for all language learners. So we have using visuals to support comprehension. So that includes gestures, facial expressions, using props, real objects, pictures, graphic organizers, and so on. Another really important strategy is responding to the student in a way that extends their language. So you could do this, for example, by modeling a correction. And there wouldn't be any expectation for the student to repeat you would just want them to hear your correction. So for example, if a student says, I go to the store, you would respond by saying, oh, you went to the store, and you're modeling that correction. And you can also extend their learning by modeling more advanced vocabulary for them to use, or more advanced language structures. So for example, if the student says the dinosaur is big, you might want to show a more advanced use of a word, and you would say, oh yes, the dinosaur is very big, it's enormous. And the other strategy that we could talk about for those higher level comprehension skills, like making predictions and inferences, is the strategy of modeling thinking aloud. That's really helpful for students to hear the educator demonstrate and make explicit the thinking that happens. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, these general communication strategies are going to be helpful for all students, but there are going to be students who are going to need some more direct or explicit or intensive support. So even, for example, some students might need very specialized visuals, or they need more visuals more often. Some students, for their comprehension, they need instructions to be simplified or chunked. Another example is that some students are going to need some very structured and scaffolded practice opportunities to understand and use language. And we know that educators are just constantly adding to their toolbox and adding tools, new strategies, and new activities to support their students.
Oh, absolutely. So I would assume that technology obviously can be one of those tools in this toolbox. And how do you see technology supporting language development?
Right. So I think technology can be very useful to support language learning in many ways. For some time now, but especially in this era of virtual learning, we're seeing all kinds of digital tools and platforms being used, whether classrooms are virtual or bricks and mortar. And for all students, I think we see that technology platforms, apps, websites, programs, they provide a very motivating and engaging way for many of our students to interact with learning. And if we think back to those basic communication strategies and using visuals to support comprehension, we can think of a very simple example of using technology, which might just be to show a video to help demonstrate a concept and support students' understanding of words just by bringing words to life in the format of a video. I do believe, though, that the key to using technology is that it's used in the context of those authentic and meaningful interactions with others. And Clicker is a great program. It offers a range of supports that assist with oral language learning for all. And there's also ways to use the program very strategically for those students who need extra support.
Oh, well, that's great to hear. I agree. So where would you think we should start in looking at how to use Clicker to support oral language learning?
Yeah, and where do we start when it comes to language learning, right? So I would say the best place to start is vocabulary skills. They really are the building blocks of language development. So in terms of vocabulary development, we can think about supporting the receptive language skills as well as the expressive. So students with weak receptive vocabulary knowledge have a hard time understanding new words or understanding how words relate to another. And students with weak expressive vocabulary, on the other hand, have a hard time labeling and describing things with precision or as expected for their age. And they may use vague language like this one or that one, and kind of rely on pointing to items rather than using specific terms. So when we look at strategies to support vocabulary development, We know that all students benefit from an exposure to a range of new vocabulary terms. So they need to hear these new words in many contexts throughout their day. So lessons, routines, play, conversations, books. And they also need opportunities to use this new vocabulary to demonstrate their learning and share their ideas. So most students will need to hear a few examples of new words. A student-friendly definition is often helpful, and they do need to hear the words more than once. And then some students will need even more support, right? So maybe more repetition, fewer new words at a time, more visuals like semantic maps, and even hands-on activities, like maybe touching items and sorting them into categories of hard versus soft items. And they may need some more scaffolded practice to understand and use the words that they learn. So again, this extra support can happen offline, but there are some nice ways to support online. And so maybe we can take a look at some examples in Clicker now.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great, Lydia. Listening to what you just said, I really do think that Clicker can hit a lot of those extra supports that you were talking about. So there really are actually so many different ways that you could use Clicker, but I think we'll go ahead and start by looking at Clicker books. And I'm going to go ahead and open a Clicker book called A Day at the Zoo. And when I'm opening this book, you'll notice that a teacher could read this book out loud to their class or to some groups of students, but you also can click on individual words to hear them.
Robbie liked.
But also, one thing that you're going to see throughout our session today is that what's so great about Clicker is that with any kind of our sets or resources, you can easily edit the book or the other sets to match what your learners' needs are. So in this example, if I go into edit mode, I'm going to go ahead and add a speaker button to this page, so that a student can actually access the book more independently and listen to the full text on their own. I'm going to come out of edit mode here, and when I click on the speaker button,
Sally liked the elephants.
we can hear the text.
Yes, and that option for students to access the book independently is a nice feature, especially for those students who benefit from repetition. So after a whole class read aloud, the students could listen to the story again in this way and get that extra repetition. And being able to edit the language in the books is a nice feature too. It allows for that differentiation. Some students will benefit from simple vocabulary and language that's used and repeated in this story, like Sally liked the elephants, Robbie liked the elephants is on the next page. Robbie liked the tigers, I believe, if I remember this this book correctly. But some students benefit from more advanced language. So you might have a student where you want to set the text to Sally liked the elephant's tusk, or Sally saw an enormous elephant.
Yeah, and it's so easy to make those changes. I actually can, just by going into the book here, I can make those changes to that text automatically.
Elephants.
And then the speaker is going to automatically adapt to that changed text.
Sally liked the elephant's trunk.
So let's look on, though. I know, Lydia, that you and I also talked about Clicker matching sets and how they can be helpful in reinforcing vocabulary. And you also just gave the example of students who might be at a stage where they're learning not only animal names, but also vocabulary related to the characteristics of the animals. So I'm going to open a matching set, a Clicker matching set. And this is a sound and picture matching set. And so if the students were learning new vocabulary, like an elephant has a trunk, when I go to one of the matching pages, they can listen to that vocabulary.
An elephant has a trunk.
And then they're going to choose the appropriate animal to match that vocabulary.
Well done.
So matching sets are a great way for students to hear target vocabulary in a focused way and check their understanding, right? So during a read aloud, words such as animals, names, or characteristics of animals are being heard in the context of a whole story, which is a lot of language at the end. So you can see how the matching set really focuses in on providing students with the opportunity to hear target vocabulary in shorter chunks. And for some students, this could be at a simple sentence level, like an elephant has a trunk. And for other students, it might need to be simplified. So elephant, lion, bear. And then there's also a way to further differentiate, which is nice, in just having fewer options for the students to pick from at a time.
Yeah, why don't I show us just how easy it is to kind of make those changes. If I come up into the clicker set and I'm going to go back into the edit mode of this matching set. And what we can do is, first of all, I can change the amount of choices that the students have. So I'm going to knock that down to they're just selecting from 2 options. But also, instead of having the target sound be that full sentence, I can go in and change the sound just to the name of the picture. And so when we go back into the set this time, you'll see
Elephant.
and then we can just match the picture to that word.
Well done.
That is so handy. So we've mentioned already how students need to have opportunities to use new words in authentic contexts. So we can imagine students playing with animal figurines and an educator joins in the play. And it would be great if the educator could use those basic communication strategies that we reviewed earlier. So in this context, it would be that the educator is watching what the students are interested in, joining in their play, modeling language based on the child's interests, maybe adding new words, repeating those words often, and waiting expectantly for the students to take talking turns. But some students are going to need more support. So even, for example, the educator might need to use with one student a fill in the blank prompt. So something like, I see a bear, I see a lion, I see a, and wait for the student to fill in. Sharing a book and talking about the pictures together is also a really nice way, would be a really nice opportunity. And within Clicker, talk sets provides a nice additional way to scaffold vocabulary practice. Maybe we could take a look at an example of that, Tanya.
Oh, sure. Let's go ahead and we'll stick with the animal theme. And I'm going to open a listen and say talk set called Farm Animals. And what you'll see on this start page is that a student can click on any of the pictures to hear the words read aloud.
Cow. Chicken. Pig.
And then when we move forward in the set to the activity pages, that they again can listen to the word by simply clicking on the picture.
Cow.
And then the sound recorder button here gives them the option and the opportunity to be able to record themselves saying the word.
Yes, and this can be a nice way for the students to get extra repetition of words. And the part where they record themselves might be a scaffolded opportunity to practice saying the words. So of course, though, when it comes to using vocabulary, the goal is for students to use words on their own and in meaningful ways when talking to others, but this could be a very helpful activity to support students along the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we had talked about kind of another way of how vocabulary development, sorry, Lydia, just say, we were talking about how part of vocabulary development is helping students understand how words connect to each other. So things like in categories.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the tools that I was thinking that Clicker offers is our Clicker boards, which can be used to create lots of different activities, including this one that I'm going to open right now, which is called Land and Water Animals. And in this activity, it's going to let students move the animals, drag the pictures of animals to the correct part of the Venn diagrams. So we'll just move a few of the animals around. Let's get an water one in there. And you can see they can drag them to the correct spot on the clicker board.
This is a great activity to help students understand the subcategories of animals. Being able to understand how things are the same or different develops deep knowledge of vocabulary terms. So an elephant is an animal, it has a trunk and lives on land. And this activity is really nice for educators to use as it's ready to go with pictures, right? And some students will need those pictures to support their comprehension, or if they're not decoding yet, if they can't decode written words that might be used. So something similar might be used in class, in person, with paper, but it is nice to have this ready to go. And there is the option to add in the words printed, so you can have the best of everything.
Yeah, I could just click into one of the pictures and I can add text to that. We can then make it larger for the students to be able to see, and they also can listen to that text if they need to as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's though have another look at another way that you could use clicker boards for kind of whole class discussions, and that is through kind of using it for brainstorming diagrams, kind of mind mapping tools. So I'm going to open another set that I have. And this is, again, we're sticking with our animals theme throughout today. And this is a farm animals mind map. And you'll see I have different tabs for different animals up here. And what we could do is for each of the animals, maybe the class is talking about words associated with that animal. And I can then click into the cells around an animal and add words that they're going to have come up with. So maybe in terms of this chicken, we might have someone who's going to say feathers, or they might say eggs. And perhaps we have hatch then come up in there too. And again, as I said before, you can always listen to any of those words.
Feathers.
In there as well.
Yeah, this is a great type of activity to do to support that deep vocabulary knowledge. And when we're thinking about vocabulary development, we want to be thinking about the different kinds of words that we're teaching, right? So not just nouns, but verbs, adjectives, adverbs. Students with strong vocabulary skills have many different kinds of words in their lexicon. So in this type of activity, you might prompt students to think about verbs, like you said, Tanya, hatch, or cluck, and maybe an adjective like soft to describe the feather.
Absolutely. It actually makes me think about, I want to jump back to one of our previous examples, if that's okay, to our talk activity, which we had here with all the different animals, and we were doing a listen and say activity with this. But I think this could also be used in a nice follow-up to that board, because I can go in and edit this set, and perhaps we don't want to be focusing on all of the animals. So I can remove some of the animals from this set. Let's just remove a few. Maybe I'll get rid of all of them except for one of them. And I'm going to turn this actually into a talk about set. And instead of just having a single record button, I'm going to actually add a couple additional record buttons to it. So this time when I come out of edit mode, you'll see, and we click on our chicken, we have 4 different recording options here. And this is going to give the students a chance for them to tell us a few things, maybe use some of that new vocabulary that they just picked up to record information about the chicken.
Yeah, I think this is a great follow-up activity. I mean, if it's a great way for students to get that extra repetition again on their own after a class discussion. And it's an engaging, scaffolded way for students to practice saying words. I could see this being very helpful for English language learning students.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially those who might be reluctant about their pronunciation. And this practice would really lend itself to oral discussion. I'm picturing an educator asking the student, tell me about chickens. And it's just a nice visual right there. And it can also, in a way, I could see that it might be helpful for students with word retrieval difficulties, because it might act as a word bank. Right. And again, I'm picturing this interaction between the educator and the student, and there's that back and forth exchange that's really helping to build the language.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I love about kind of talk sets is that the students have the ability to record over and over again, so they can get rid of their own recording. So as you said, when you're talking about English language learners and things like that, it's a very safe and comfortable place for them to practice that vocabulary. And so they can do those recordings. And then once they're happy with it, it will actually put their final recordings back on the start page. And so they have kind of a something that they're ready or feel comfortable to present. So it's a really nice, it can be used for so many different things as well. Another set that I know we really wanted to, or kind of a set type that we really wanted to make sure that we had a look at, was sentence sets. And so I'm going to go ahead and open a sentence set for us. And this one is on zoo animals. And while I know that probably a lot of times sentence sets are commonly used to support writing development, it was really interesting, Lydia, to discuss with you how you thought about using them to support oral language development. And so I'm going to I'll get us started on that, and I'm going to go into the edit mode again of this set, because what you'll see with sentence sets is there's lots of different ways that you can add kind of scaffolding for the students. And this in some cases might be adding model sentences, or it might be the order that the words show up on the grid. And I know we talked about using guided order, which I can turn on here, for language development. And you'll see I've turned that on, and when I come out of edit mode now, you'll see that it actually is literally walking me through creating that sentence. So I will click.
There was a fierce lion. There was a fierce lion.
And so as you'll see it walked me through that full sentence.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, when your goal is writing, you can see how one of the outcomes of this activity is to generate written language into a document. But we can also consider how having that guided access on supports the student to create a correct sentence with errorless learning. And the student hears the sentence with the auditory and visual feedback. So this can provide students who need it with that extra focused repetition of target vocabulary. And using a sentence in the sentence set is a nice progression to the sentence level compared to the word level activities that we saw with some of the matching sets and talking sets. So again, the goal is, of course, to have students understand language that they hear, and on the flip side, create their own genuine and meaningful sentences with good vocabulary when speaking with others. This activity in Clicker is a nice additional support for students who are learning to do this. And it provides scaffolded input and that repetition of language. So you can see as the student selects words that are in guided order, they get the auditory input for each single word and then the whole sentence to get at the end. And there's also a picture to support their comprehension of that sentence. So otherwise, we can think about how a student usually just hears words and words connected in speech when people are talking. And so on that note, we can also see how this activity supports the student's development of word boundaries, which is great for literacy development too. You can be very strategic with this program and with this activity, the sentence set, by repeating a target word in sentences within a set. So for example, if you wanted to focus on the word hunt, you could use sentences such as a bear hunts, a lion hunts. And this would be a really nice practice opportunity after an educator has introduced that word hunt in class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just show you again just how quickly it is. If you wanted to adapt this set in that way, I'm going to go back into edit mode and we can change the text up here. So I think Lydia just said the lion, oops, the lion hunts. And one thing that's kind of useful to know is that I can put words together in a cell by using brackets around them. So in this case, instead of joining more than one word, I'm actually going to put brackets around the word and the punctuation because we're not focusing on the punctuation here. So we want to kind of simplify that. But again, so when I come out of edit mode, you'll see we have very quickly simplified that sentence to make it appropriate or to get that repetition that you were just talking about, Lydia, on that. Mm-hmm. If you don't mind, if I could take a moment just while we're sticking with sentence sets, is to show you just how easy it is to kind of create your own set of sentences. So if we remember back to that first book that we were looking at, actually, I'll just jump back there for a moment, where we had the children at the zoo and the different animals that they liked. I could create very easily a sentence set from those sentences. And so I have, I'm going to grab, if you bear with me, I have those sentences and I'm just going to copy them. And I'm going to go to Clicker Set and say new. And I'm going to create a sentence set. And this allows me to, I can either type in a bunch of sentences, or in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and paste those sentences in that I've already grabbed from that book previously. And when I click OK, it automatically has generated that sentence set really quickly for us. And at that point, you can do things and you can decide, okay, we wanted to use guided order. I want to be able to offer a picture on each of the pages for that. And I want to use that across the board. So I'm going to replicate that for all my sentences. And then in this case, I can come in and add a picture. With Clicker, there's thousands of pictures ready for you to use. So I can go into our library and I'm going to search for elephant. And then I can add that picture to that sentence set. And we can go into this next one, which was about the tiger. And I also can go in and search for a tiger picture. And we can then insert that as well. Oops, if I search for that. And so when we run this set, you see immediately we have another sentence set that's ready for the students to use. And it's really very quick and very easy to kind of create those sort of sentences. Right. And actually, one thing, though, to show you, because even though I showed how quick and easy it is, I want to highlight that we have a resource bank called Learning Grids. And I'm going to go up here and take us to Learning Grids. And Learning Grids is a bank of resources that are ready for you to use, that you can see that we have hundreds of sentence sets there. We also have hundreds of Clicker books like we were looking at before, and the board sets and the talk sets that we also have looked at, in addition to some other set types that we haven't looked at today. So if you're just getting started with Clicker, Learning Grids, I know, is a fantastic place to kind of get started with that on there. You'll see there's also different categories. And so we were talking specifically about vocabulary, and there's a section here about vocabulary where you'll find things like talk sets with some of the high frequency words, those listen and say type of activities where we're really going to be able to get that sort of practice in. So we're kind of starting to wrap up our time here today. So Lydia, would you mind kind of recapping some of the things that we've been looking at?
Yes, we've talked about a lot. We started the conversation by talking about the importance of oral language skills, right, for many reasons. We focused on vocabulary development as the building blocks for higher level language and literacy skills. We spoke about supporting oral language skills, including vocabulary offline and online. And we were able to look at some different examples within Clicker of how to support vocabulary development, both in terms of those activities that all students could benefit from, as well as that extra enriched opportunities for students who need it to engage with vocabulary in very structured and scaffolded ways.
Oh, yeah, no, fantastic. I think we really have covered quite a lot today, and I really kind of thank everybody for joining us. But I really, Lydia, want to thank you for kind of sharing so much useful information, ideas. It's fantastic to be kind of thinking about the ways that we can help support our students with language development. We have students who have so many different needs, and I think a lot of the kind of ideas away from the computer that you shared, but also some of the ideas that we've been able to share with Clicker, I think is really helpful in giving us some ways to move forward. I hope that everyone will be sure to look at the Crick website, the Cricksoft website, for lots of other kind of Clicker ideas and tutorials. So if you're new to Clicker, there's a whole range of tutorials that'll show you how to create sentence sets, how to use learning grids, how to use the talking books, create your own, and some of the set types that we haven't looked at yet today. But also don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you'd like to learn more about Clicker and to find out how we could help your students. Our fantastic consultants would be really happy to meet with you and to talk through what your specific school's needs. So thanks again for joining us. It's been great, and I hope that you're taking away some really useful things from the session today.